I want you to pause for a second and imagine a hiring interview. You are sitting across from a hiring manager for a high-level government position, a position responsible for protecting federal whistleblowers. And during the background check, they find a text message where you explicitly admit to having, quote, a Nazi streak. Do you get the job? In any sane universe, in any functioning democracy, the answer is absolutely not. You are laughed out of the room, you are put on a list. But in Donald Trump's White House, you get nominated. Let's be extremely clear about what we are witnessing right now, because the normalization of this insanity is the most dangerous part. We are not just seeing political chaos. We are seeing the complete implosion of the executive branch's ability to function. New reporting from the Daily Beast, Politico, and The Guardian has confirmed that the Trump administration has now been forced to withdraw 57 political nominees in just the first year of his second term. 57. That is not a hiccup. That is not growing pains. That is a historic collapse. That is more withdrawn nominees than any president has had in the last 40 years. We're talking about nearly 6 people who were handpicked to run the United States government, who were supposedly vetted, and who turned out to be so toxic, so unqualified, or so blatantly scandalous that even a Senate controlled by Republicans looked at them and said, "We can't do it." And frankly, it's pathetic. But here is the part that should make your blood run cold. It's not just the number, it is who these people are. We are talking about Paul Ingrassia. This was Trump's pick for the Office of Special Counsel. This is the watchdog agency. This is the guy who is supposed to ensure the government runs legally. And why did he have to withdraw? Because leaked group chats revealed him saying that Martin Luther King Jr. Day should be, and I am quoting him directly here, tossed into the 7th circle of hell. He didn't stop there. When another person in the chat joked that he belonged in the Hitler Youth, Ingrassia didn't deny it. He didn't say, "That's offensive." He replied, "I do have a Nazi streak in me from time to time. I will admit it." He admitted it.
And yet, he was nominated. He was pushed forward. The White House vouched for him. And do you want to know the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday? Do you want to know how someone like that even gets in the door? Because his mother lobbied for him. I wish I was joking, I really do. But we have reports that this vetting nightmare was allowed to happen because of nepotism, because of acquaintances, because his mommy called the White House to get her son a job he had no business having. This isn't drain the swamp. This is a sewer backing up into the Oval Office. And make no mistake, the people leaking this, the people telling the Daily Beast about this secret chaos, they aren't Democrats. They aren't the liberal media. They are Trump's own people. They are White House insiders who are watching this clown car crash into a wall and are terrified of what happens next. So if you are watching this and feeling like you are taking crazy pills because the administration that promised extreme vetting for immigrants can't even vet its own staff for actual Nazis, you are not alone. But we need to dig deeper, because Ingrassia is just a symptom. The disease is much, much worse. You might be thinking, okay, surely it can't be that bad. Maybe the Nazi streak comment was a bad joke. Maybe we're missing context. No, we're not, because we have the receipts. And when you look at the full log of what Paul Ingrassia, again, I cannot stress this enough, the man nominated to be the chief of the Office of Special Counsel, was texting to his fellow Republicans, it paints a picture so grotesque that it defies belief. He didn't just attack MLK Day. In another message from January 2024, referring to former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, Ingrassia wrote, "Never trust a Chinaman or Indian. Never. Never trust A Chinaman.
He used a racial slur from the 19th century. He attacked an Indian American Republican. And then he went on to say that holidays like Juneteenth and Black History Month should be eviscerated. Now ask yourself, how does someone who talks like that, who thinks like that, and who puts those thoughts into writing in a group chat get past the first round of vetting? How does he get past the second round? How does he end up with a nomination on the president's desk? The answer lies in who was running the show. For the first year of this term, the Presidential Personnel Office, the gatekeepers, the people whose one job is to stop exactly this kind of embarrassment, was run by a man named Sergio Gor. Who is Sergio Gor? Well, according to White House insiders speaking to Politico, he presided over a vetting nightmare. Sources say that nominations under his watch were not done in good faith. They were done based on acquaintances. They were done based on who sucked up the most. They were done based on who could get their mother to call the right person. It was an office run on vibes, loyalty tests, and nepotism, completely devoid of basic competence. And what was the consequence for Sergio Gor? What happened to the man who allowed a guy with a self-admitted Nazi streak to be nominated for a top federal post? Was he fired? Was he reprimanded? Was he cast out of the MAGA kingdom? Of course not. He was promoted. Donald Trump has now nominated Sergio Gor to be the United States ambassador to India. I want you to really sit with the irony of that for a moment. The man who oversaw a vetting process that let through a candidate who said never trust an Indian, that man is now being sent to represent the United States in India. You literally cannot write a script this stupid. If I put this in a movie, you would walk out because it's too on the nose. But this isn't a movie. This is our foreign policy. This is our national security, and it is being run by people who are failing upwards at a velocity that defies physics. And the Trump team knows it. They know this is a disaster. How do we know they know? Because of who they brought in to clean up the mess.
Dan Scavino. When the Ingrassia scandal broke, when the 57 withdrawals number started hitting the headlines, who did Trump tap to take over the personnel office? His social media guy, his golf caddy, his longest-serving loyalist. They didn't bring in a professional HR executive. They didn't bring in a legal expert. They brought in the guy whose main qualification is that he knows how to post tweets that make Trump happy. This is a panic move. This is the equivalent of throwing a bucket of water on a grease fire. They are terrified, they are scrambling, and they are hoping that if they just shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic fast enough, you won't notice the iceberg they just rammed into. But we notice, the Senate notices, and the 57 people who have already been chewed up and spit out by this chaotic machine, they certainly notice. And this brings us to the most infuriating part of this entire saga, the hypocrisy. For years, we have heard Donald Trump scream about extreme vetting. We heard it in 2016, we heard it in 2020, we heard it in 2024. We need extreme vetting for immigrants. We need extreme vetting for refugees. We need to check every social media post, every phone call, every association of anyone who wants to enter this country to ensure they share our values. And yet, when it comes to the people who will actually run the government, when it comes to the people who will have access to classified information, who will enforce our laws, who will represent us on the world stage, the vetting is non-existent. It is a joke. It is a Nazi streak and a phone call from mom. They don't care about values. They don't care about safety. They care about loyalty. And what we are learning the hard way is that when you prioritize loyalty over competence, you don't just get incompetence, you get malevolence, you get chaos, and you get a government that is fundamentally incapable of doing the one thing it is supposed to do, govern. But wait, it gets worse. Because this isn't just about a few bad apples slipping through the cracks, this is about the cracks being the entire design of the building. You need to understand that the Nazi text scandal is not a glitch in the system, it is the system. And if you think this is unique to Paul Ingrassia or Sergio Gor, you haven't been paying attention to the last 8 years of Donald Trump's management style. Let's zoom out, because 57 withdrawn nominees in 1 year doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. It happens when you fundamentally view expertise as a threat and loyalty as the only currency that matters. We saw the blueprint for this in the first term, but back then there were guardrails. Remember the adults in the room? We had Rex Tillerson, Jim Mattis, John Kelly. Now, I didn't agree with their politics, but they were functional adults who understood that you can't just hire your golf buddies to run the Pentagon. But what happened to them? They were purged, one by one. They were fired, insulted, and replaced by sycophants. And what we are seeing now, in this second term, is the logical conclusion of that purge. There are no adults left. There are no guardrails. The deep state they complained about, that was just code for people who know how to read the Constitution. And they have successfully eliminated them. This brings us to Project 2025. You've heard about it. You've read the headlines. But you need to understand how it connects directly to the chaos we are seeing right now. Project 2025 wasn't just a policy wish list. It was a personnel strategy. The Heritage Foundation spent millions of dollars building a database of loyal conservatives to flood the administration. They literally called it a LinkedIn for conservatives. But here's the catch. They didn't filter for competence. They filtered for ideology. They didn't ask, are you good at running a federal agency? They asked, are you loyal to Donald Trump? And when that is your primary metric, of course you end up with Paul Ingrassia. Of course you end up with people who have Nazi streaks. Because the Venn diagram of people who are unconditionally loyal to Donald Trump and people who are competent normal professionals is basically two circles that don't touch.
The Brookings Institution has been tracking this data for decades, and the numbers don't lie. They found that in his first term, Trump had a turnover rate among his senior staff of 92%. Let me repeat that. 92%. That is not a government, that is a revolving door attached to a dumpster fire. And now, in the second term, they have managed to break their own record, 57 withdrawals in year one. Why? Because they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. They have run out of qualified Republicans who are willing to debase themselves for the king. So who is left? The grifters, the trolls, the people who think posting racist memes in a group chat is satire. And the most dangerous part is that they don't see this as a problem. To them, competence is suspicious. If you know too much about how the government works, you are part of the swamp. If you have too much experience, you are deep state. So they intentionally hire the inexperienced, they intentionally hire the reckless, because reckless people are easier to control. Reckless people don't ask questions about the legality of an order. Reckless people just do what they are told. Look at the pattern. In the first term, we had withdrawals like Andrew Puzder for Labor Secretary, who withdrew because he had hired an undocumented housekeeper, the exact thing Trump campaigned against. We had Roni Jackson for VA Secretary, who withdrew amid allegations of professional misconduct. But those were scandals of personal conduct. What we are seeing now is something darker. We are seeing scandals of ideological extremism. We are seeing nominees withdrawn not just because they have skeletons in their closet, but because they are fundamentally opposed to the mission of the agencies they are supposed to lead. Ingrassia was supposed to protect whistleblowers. He hates whistleblowers. He thinks the federal workforce is the enemy.
And he is not alone. Across the board, we are seeing nominees who are being picked specifically because they want to destroy the institutions they are being asked to run. This is the deconstruction of the administrative state that Steve Bannon promised us years ago. And 57 withdrawals later, we can see exactly how messy, how chaotic, and how dangerous that deconstruction really is. But here is the twist. This chaos isn't just hurting the liberals, it's hurting them. The secret chaos that insiders are leaking about, it's because the different factions of MAGA are at war with each other.
You have the Project 2025 loyalists versus the New York circle. You have the ideological purists versus the grifters just looking for a paycheck. And they are all fighting for the same scraps of power in a White House that has no clear chain of command. One Senate aide told Politico that nominations are being pulled because of disputes between warring factions. Think about that. We don't have a Secretary of Labor because two groups of Trump loyalists can't agree on whose buddy gets the job. This is governance by gang warfare. And while they fight, the work of the people doesn't get done. Agencies go leaderless. Critical decisions get delayed. Our enemies abroad look at this chaos and see opportunity. Because make no mistake, Vladimir Putin is watching. Xi Jinping is watching. They see a U.S. government that can't even hire its own staff without tripping over a Nazi scandal. They see a president who is more interested in rewarding his golf caddy than in securing the nation. And they are laughing. But we shouldn't be laughing. We should be terrified. Because this pattern of prioritizing loyalty over competence, of purging experts and hiring extremists, has real-world consequences.
It means that when the next pandemic hits, the person in charge of the CDC might be a podcast host who doesn't believe in germs. It means that when the next financial crisis hits, the person in charge of the Treasury might be a donor who thinks the gold standard is a communist plot. It means that the levees break. It means the grid goes down. It means the response is slow, chaotic, and ineffective. We saw it with COVID. We saw what happens when you have an administration that ignores science and prioritizes optics. 1 million Americans died. And now they are doubling down. They are saying we didn't go far enough. We need people who are even more loyal. We need people who are even less beholden to facts. That is the terrifying reality of this quote-unquote record-breaking number of withdrawals. It's not just a statistic. It is a warning siren. It is the sound of the guardrails being ripped off the highway at 90 miles an hour. And if we don't pay attention, if we treat this as just another cycle of Trump being Trump, we are going to drive right off the cliff. But here's the darkest truth of all, and this is the part that keeps me up at night. What if this chaos isn't the failure? What if the chaos is the goal? We keep assuming that Donald Trump wants a functioning government. We assume he wants a State Department that can negotiate treaties, an EPA that can monitor pollution, and a Labor Department that can protect workers. But what if he doesn't? When you have 57 withdrawals in a single year, you create a vacuum. You create empty desks. You create agencies with no Senate-confirmed leadership. And in that vacuum, something very specific happens. The acting officials take over. This is the endgame. This is the loophole that Trump fell in love with during his first term, and now he's exploiting it on an industrial scale. He famously said, "I like acting because I can move so quickly." What did he mean by that? He meant that he hates the Senate confirmation process. He hates that senators, even Republican senators, get to ask his nominees questions. He hates that they have to file financial disclosures. He hates that they have to answer to the American people. So, when 57 nominees fail, he doesn't go back to the drawing board and find better candidates. No, he installs an acting secretary, someone who hasn't been vetted, someone who hasn't been confirmed, someone who serves entirely at the pleasure of the president and can be fired via tweet if they ever dare to say no. This is how you bypass the Constitution. This is how you bypass the advice and consent of the Senate. You simply stop nominating confirmable people. You nominate Nazi streak Ingrassia, you let him fail, and then you shrug and put a loyalist in the seat anyway. It is a feature, not a bug. And the result is the hollowing out of the American government. We are witnessing a brain drain of epic proportions. It's not just the top-level appointees. It's the career civil servants, the scientists, the lawyers, the analysts who are looking at this circus and fleeing in droves. They see their bosses being chosen based on nepotism. They see their agencies being weaponized against the public, and they are leaving. And who replaces them? No one, or worse, the Project 2025 army. This is the terrifying reality of the future if this continues. We are moving toward a government that is hollowed out, incompetent, and purely transactional. A government where you can't get a permit, you can't get disaster relief, and you can't get justice unless you have a connection to the family. It is the transformation of the United States federal government into a patronage network. It is the stuff of third world dictatorships happening right here in Washington, D.C. And the consequences are lethal. I want you to think about the next crisis, because there will be a next crisis. Maybe it's a cyber attack on our power grid. Maybe it's a new virus. Maybe it's a financial meltdown. In a normal administration, you have experts in the room. You have people who have spent 30 years studying these problems. You have institutional memory.
But in the Trump vetting nightmare, those people are gone. They've been purged. And in their place, you have acting officials, donors, and internet trolls. When the red light starts flashing in the Situation Room, do you want Dan Scavino deciding what to do? Do you want Paul Ingrassia handling the legal response? We are flying blind. We are stripping the copper wiring out of the house while we are still living in it. And this serves the authoritarian agenda perfectly. Because when the government fails, when the response is botched, when the checks don't arrive, Trump doesn't take the blame. He blames the deep state. He blames the system. He tells you that democracy is broken and that only he can fix it. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. They break the government to prove that government doesn't work. So what do? First, we refuse to normalize this. We refuse to look at 57 withdrawals and just shrug. We refuse to laugh off Nazi streak texts as just Trump being Trump. This is aberrant behavior. It is dangerous behavior, and we have to call it out every single day. Second, we have to support the whistleblowers. The leaks are coming out because there are still people on the inside who have a conscience. They are risking their careers to tell us the truth about this secret chaos. We need to listen to them. We need to protect them. And finally, we have to understand that this is the fight of our generation. They are counting on us getting tired. They are counting on us getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the scandal. They want us to tune out. They want us to say, it's too much, I can't follow it. Do not give them that satisfaction. Because if we look away, if we let them fill these empty seats with acting loyalists and dismantle the guardrails of our democracy in the dark, we won't wake up in a different country. We will wake up in a country where the government no longer works for us. It only works for him. The chaos is the point. The incompetence is the weapon. And the only defense we have is our refusal to accept it. I'm Ethan Cole. Don't lose hope, but do not close your eyes.